So home sellers, the list price might be your opinion of value, but the appraisal is often where the market data is going to test that opinion and see if it's valid. This is Jason Valentine with Coldwell Banker High Desert Realty. And sellers, I want to talk to you about pricing today, but from a different angle. Not just what you want to list for and not just what you hope the house is worth. I want to talk to you about how value gets verified when a buyer's using financing. You know, recently I represented a buyer on a property, and that property appraised for $25,000 less than the list price. Now, that's not a small difference. This was over 10% of where the house was listed at. But it is exactly why sellers need to understand that pricing is not a chance event. Pricing should not be based on hopes, guesses, or what somebody wishes a property is going to be worth. Pricing should be based on data that can be verified. And one of the most important sources of data is the local multiple listing service, or MLS. The MLS is not just where homes are advertised, it's also where closed sales are recorded. And with those closed sales becomes part of the evidence used to understand what's happening in the market and market value in your house. When an appraiser evaluates a property, they're not simply walking through the house and picking a number, they're looking at comparable sales. And those properties that have actually sold, not homes that are listed, not homes that are pending, and not homes that the seller hopes will sell for a certain amount, actual closings. And that matters quite a bit because active listings tells us what the competition is asking. Pending sales tell us where buyers might be engaging on targets, but sold listings tell us where buyers actually paid on the market and where it's already supported. And this data is an appraisal, or that is the data an appraisal is trying to verify. So an appraiser is going to look at things like location, square footage, condition, bathroom count, size, and then adjustments are going to be made for the difference between the subject property and the comparable sales. So if the seller says, I want to pay $25,000 more than, or I want to sell for $25,000 more than what the data supports, there might be a problem when the appraisal comes in. And this is especially important when the buyer is using financing, because the buyer might be willing to pay more than a certain price and the seller might be willing to accept that price. But if the lender is coming up against a short appraisal, they're going to limit the loan amount to that. The lender is not lending based on hopes and dreams. The lender is lending based on supporting values in the market. And that's where sellers can get in trouble. If the property is overpriced and the appraisal comes in low, now everyone has to deal with the problem later in the transaction. The buyer may not be able to move forward at this price. The seller might have to reduce the price. The buyer might have to bring additional money. The parties might have to renegotiate, and truthfully, the transaction might fall apart. This is added stress in your transaction that you don't need, and in many cases, it could have been avoided by using good data up front. This is why a proper pricing strategy matters more when the home goes active. A good market analysis should not tell you what you want to hear, but it should really show you what is actually going on in the market. What has sold, what's currently competing against your home, what has gone under contract, are there any outliers out there, and what features truly add value. Now, the last question is important, which is what would an appraiser likely see? And a seller should not wait until the appraisal to have that conversation. The conversation should happen before the home's listed, because overpricing is not about being conservative, it's about being strategic, or pricing correctly is about being strategic. You want to attract buyers and you want to create confidence in the home you're trying to sell, and you want to survive the appraisal. That's how you get to closing. And all of this begins with data. Sellers, if you're thinking about selling, don't just ask what I can list for, ask what can the market support, because that's a big difference. The list price might get attention, the contract price might create excitement, but the appraisal likely determines what value can actually be supported. Pricing is not a chance event. Instead, it's built from MLS data, sold comparables, and a strategy that can stand up even when the value is tested. So if you're thinking about selling your house, let's review the MLS data before you go on the market. And I'm going to try to help you understand what buyers, lenders, and appraisers are likely to see. This is Jason Valentine with Coldwell Banker High Desert Realty. If you want to give me a yell, start getting a little bit of idea of the data on your house and what it might support, There is a link up in the description of this property or of this video. Give me a call. We'll talk about your property and start getting that information together. You can give me a call on 575-496-1068 or 505-863-4363 at the Caldwell Banker High Desert Realty office. Thank you so much, and use data to make good decisions so you don't get caught at the end of the transaction with a short appraisal trying to figure out what to do. Thanks. Bye-bye.